All right, I'm ready to go through roll call here.
What timing, right? Just the recorder just kicked off. So yes, welcome everyone to the November 14th edition of the DOTI Advisory Board meeting here. We'll kick off with roll call. Alan.
I'll just go through it if you could just let me know if you're here. Joni Allen.
Here.
Welcome. Lucia Brown.
Here.
Welcome back from Australia.
Thank you.
Alicia Brown. Nope. Brian Carroll.
Yep, I'm here.
Welcome. Ian.
I'm here. Yes.
Great. Jake.
Here.
Welcome. Amy.
Here.
Welcome. I'm here. Paul Gonzer.
Don't see a Paul yet.
Great. Christopher Johnson.
Here.
Great. Gary Johnson.
I'm here today.
Welcome. Joe. Joe Levy.
I thought I saw him join. So maybe he's having, no, there he is. Joe. Maybe we can't hear your audio. I see his face.
It's given if you see his face, we'll check that off. Jamie Lewis.
Here.
Welcome, Jamie. Eileen. Nope. Eileen McCowell.
I see Eileen. Must be muted. Yep.
Great. Kurt Morrison.
Can't hear you now, Eileen, either. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Curtis Morrison. Jonathan Pires here, and Julie.
Hi, I'm here.
Welcome. Great. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So definitely hit quorum tonight.
Yes, good thing. All right, so that's roll call. Next up, approval of October meeting minutes. Wondering if we can get a second on approving October's meeting minutes.
Second.
Second, great. All in favor of approving those minutes? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Sounds like no. All right, October meeting minutes approved then. We can get that noted down. We typically move now on to public comment. I'm wondering if Michelle, if you wanted to speak first or move us straight into public comment.
Let's move straight into public comment. We've got 2 people signed up today. Let me see if, okay, the first one is Wendy. Wendy, I'm going to move you over to being a panelist. Let us know when you've joined. Wendy, have you joined?
I've joined.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me an opportunity. I'll be very brief. I'm calling about talking with you about the 7th and Ash calming project, which is either a roundabout or a neighborhood traffic circle, depending upon your point of view. The reason I was hoping to speak with you is to see if I could encourage prior notice, advance notice of changes to these traffic calming projects for either the RNO or the council office. We have had a sort of a modified traffic circle for a couple of years. It's been a project, but now it apparently is officially a traffic circle. Hallelujah. We are very thrilled about it. So we now have the asphalt and the solid surface in the circle. But we didn't get any notice that the signage and the approach to the roundabout circle was going to change until it actually happened. In the midst of happening, I drove by and saw DOTI doing the installation. And maybe for any other project, it's not an issue, but for these traffic circles, because most Americans don't know what to do with them. It would have been great to have prior notice, so I could, as sort of the neighborhood project coordinator, could have gotten the word out to the neighborhood that things were going to be changing. So that's just one thing. The prior notice would be
Trying to
great.
figure out how to turn that down. I tried this one. but it
Yeah,
didn't.
that didn't work.
And secondarily, it would be great if there were instructions that I could access to send to the neighborhood via our social networking, especially video instructions.
A little loud for you, was it?
There's no instruction for neighborhood circles or roundabouts unless I go to European or Australian resources. So anyway, that's all that I wanted to share. I hope that we could get that kind of updated in the event of future traffic circles, which would be great to have installed across the city. So thanks very much for everything that you do. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Wendy. And actually, if I could briefly ask a clarifying question to make sure I didn't misunderstand. I'm not sure I understood what exactly changed with 7 and Ash. Was it already a traffic circle in place?
Recording in progress.
And signage changed? Or is what changed? Sorry, I think I have an echo. Alicia, could you mute, please? Alicia, could you mute? That might have fixed it. Great. Yeah, sorry, Wendy. Is it that a traffic circle was very recently installed and that's what changed, or was it already a present traffic circle and signage changed?
It was already a present traffic circle. It was it was labeled a project for about 2 years. And it had a stop sign at the north and south entry points. And then, through signage for the east-west along 7th Avenue. And so the change that was made was to make it a real roundabout. And so that you give way to the right. And so the signs were removed and traffic circle signs were installed.
Understood.
So
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Yep. Got this noted down. And in fact, I recognize we're at the DOTI advisory board, but I may also pass this feedback back along to Councilman Cashman. I know he's working on some R&O re-enabling ordinance and some changes around what kind of notices go to R&Os right now. So I might pass this feedback along to his office as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I just wanted to offer to Wendy, if I could drop in the chat, if you don't mind. Wendy Sandpiper with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And we do have a video that shows how motorists and bicyclists can travel through a traffic circle in a neighborhood setting. So I'll just drop that into the chat. I'll indicate the timestamp at which that diagram is shared. And I hope that that's helpful and something that you could share across your networks as well. So
That
thanks
would
for
be
the
great.
question.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cobble something together myself, and this would be a time saver for me. So thank you.
Awesome. I'll send that to you. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks so much, Sam. Super helpful.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to next person. The next person, let's see if Dawn is with us. Okay. Dawn, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Please let us know when you've joined. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Dawn Janelle Hurwitz. I'm a resident of West Washington Park and a candidate for City Council in the 2023 election to represent District 7. Thanks to the admirable efforts by our community members, many others and I have had the opportunity recently or over the last year to learn about the history and current plans for the I-25 Broadway interchange. I've also visited the planned construction area a few times as well. On the city's website, the goals of this interchange project are to create a safe and efficient area for all transportation modes, to ease congestion, reduce the potential for crashes, enhance bicycle and pedestrian connectivity in the area, and to improve access to and from RTD's Broadway station. However, in the current design, it shows that additional hostile intersections are going to be created, like requiring a pedestrian to cross 5 highway on-ramps in order to get to the RTD Broadway station. Sidewalk width is shortened in areas that are going to have high-speed car traffic. There are no bike paths or pedestrian safety measures. The project also tears down 9 housing units to speed up traffic getting on I-25 who just end up coming to a stop at the metering lights. So going back to the project goals, this design does not appear safe and efficient for all transportation modes. Safety decreases, which discourages pedestrians even more. Bike and pedestrian connectivity in the area to and from RTD's Broadway station are not enhanced. And this is a concern because the project is supposed to serve the public good, and it appears that that's compromised here. This project also contradicts the city's goals and plans set forth in Denver Moves, Blueprint Denver, Vision Zero, the Comprehensive Plan, Denver's Complete Street Design Guidelines, and Denver's Climate Action Plan, to name a few. Also, there's bus rapid transit infrastructure. The BRT infrastructure is in the city plans for this area, but it's not included in the current design. So to us, that looks like costly changes are going to have to be incurred in the future to redesign this area all over again just to meet those requirements. So I submitted a question earlier today asking if DOTI has investigated the feedback and proposed changes requested in an addendum provided to you by the representatives of the West Wash Park RNO and the Lincoln Broadway Corridor RNO. And if so, what changes are being made to uphold the listed project goals along with adhering to the city's goals and plans? Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. As you've seen, this was a focus of our September meeting. And I know we and also the RNOs have sent some follow-ups to the department. Haven't heard back on our part yet either, unless I've missed some communication along the way. So I might suggest, Jake, let me know if you disagree here. We put this into our odds and ends discussion a little later tonight to figure out who to converse with about this, to see what has, if anything, shifted in the project, what responses or communications might be forthcoming related to this project.
I think that sounds great.
Thanks. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Okay, John, I'm gonna be back over the attendees.
And Michelle, thank you for that. I can't recall, did you say there were just 2 commenters tonight, or are there more waiting in the
No.
queue?
Two have been registered, which is the way we're supposed to do this. We have 2 hands up in over with the attendees. We don't, if we run out of time, we don't normally acknowledge that. It really depends on if you guys want me. Joel and Amy are both over there and they have their hands up. So we can either open that up or to each of them, or we can follow the rules and move forward.
Understood. Looking at time, we are slightly ahead of schedule here. We started public comment a little bit early, so we have 9 minutes to go. If no opposition from Jake or others, I might suggest we allow the 2 commenters as they'd fit within our allotted time.
I'll move Joel. We'll see how far we get.
Okay.
Joel, you have been moved over to panelist. Please let us know when you I see.
Good evening, DOTI Board. This is Joel Noble. I live in the Curtis Park neighborhood in the 5 Point statistical neighborhood. A couple pieces of good news, but then something disturbing I'm hoping you can help with. The first piece of good news, of course, is in 2020, DOTI completed and published the Complete Streets Design Guideline, which is a landmark for Denver. Clear, visual, multimodal guidance on use of the streets, including how to determine what the design speed should be, as we're in an era where we design for the speeds we want, rather than design a street, see how fast people go, and then post according to how fast people are going. The second bit of good news is, after many decades of asking that Stout Street through the residential neighborhood be converted to two-way. DOTI has been doing a study of that and finds that it's feasible from a design and use perspective. So that's also fantastic. However, at a recent presentation, DOTI showed their designs and showed that the street would be continuing to be 30 miles an hour in each direction in the two-way configuration. And when asked about this, referencing the Complete Streets Design Guidelines, getting very, very squirrely answers from DOTI about why this design speed, 30 miles an hour. And as you know, you design the road with a number of characteristics, the sight lines, the widths of lanes, etc. And people will drive the speed that they feel comfortable, which is at least the speed is designed for. In the Complete Streets Design Guidelines on page 29, residential streets, it specifically calls out that collectors, which is the amount of volume stout carries, should be 25 miles an hour, and arterials, which is what stout is classified as, should be streets that have a range of traffic that is far greater than stout actually has, and they should have speeds of 25 to 30 miles an hour, with a note that designers should use the lower range of design speeds whenever possible. I've pressed the DOTI project team on why they're not recommending 25. Clearly, the Complete Streets Design Guidelines calls for 25. And what I'm getting back is, well, we weren't really studying changing the speed, or most disturbingly, well, once we do the project, we'll see what speeds people go. And if they're actually going slower, then we'll change the posted speed. So not everyone is with the program. And I think this is a critical moment for Stout, as well as a broader question of, is DOTI committed to using its own Complete Streets Design Guidelines? Cars passing each other at a design speed, the speed we're asking for and therefore posting, of 30 miles an hour in each direction, therefore passing each other at 60 through residential street, is an absurd outcome. So I really appreciate it if the DOTI advisory board would ask some hard questions about whether DOTI is specifically using its Complete Streets Design Guidelines. Thank you.
Sorry, was muted. Thank you for that comment, Joel. Given our sort of time crunch here, I think we should probably move quickly to Amy. I think it was the last commenter.
Yes, let me promote Amy. Amy, let us know when you've joined us.
Hi, DOTI board. Amy Kenright here. I'm going to speak on behalf of the West Washington Park Neighborhood Association about the I-25 and Broadway interchange. I want to second everything that Don said. I want to let you know that our RNO sent a letter September 1st to DOTI and CDOT and Federal Highway Administration. We have received no recognition, official recognition of our letter, which is really disappointing. In our letter, we talk about how this project is in direct opposition to almost every Denver plan relating to transportation, environment, and community. The project plan does not meet the goals in the environmental assessment that's supposed to be our contract with the federal government. Namely, it does not maintain access to and from area neighborhoods. It does not provide fully integrated and useful bike and pedestrian facilities in the corridor. It does not provide multimodal travel options that may not be accommodated with existing infrastructure to address the demand as a result of the projected regional and local growth. It does not meet the goals in the environmental assessment. Please help our neighborhood get DOTI's attention. The ball is really in DOTI's court right now, and just appreciate any help you can be. Thank you.
Thank you. As you may have heard earlier, I don't know if you were on. Yes, Don had a comment related to this. We'll discuss this a little bit further in the odds and ends portion of our agenda today. And I believe that concludes our public commenters. So that moves us on to the next segment of our agenda, a brief report from DOTI leadership. Nick, is that you today?
Yes, yeah, and I'll be pretty brief here. I know we've got quite a lot of information here, especially from our Denver Moves Everyone and our outreach team. But I think most of you all are following the council budget process. I think it may even be complete at this portion. From what I've heard, the amendment that Councilwoman Sawyer offered and was vetoed, and then I believe as of this afternoon that veto was overturned. So just briefly, that was about I think a little over $1 million on some rapid flashing beacons on there. So that will be a part of the budget, and we'll certainly look forward to implementing that going forward. I think I will probably stop there and let us get to the presentations, but happy to answer any questions before we do that.
Thank you, Nick. And I think, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, just to clarify for the group, I believe the request was to get $1.5 million to ensure one flashing beacon light structure can be implemented in each of the districts. As you said, it was originally vetoed. It was requested to come out of the reserves. It was originally vetoed, and we think, I mean, this is really up to the minute here, as you were saying, we think that the veto was just overridden, so that would be locked in one per district in next year's budget. Is that right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if they ended up, I know there was talk about how they would be prioritized as opposed to doing that, but yeah, I'm talking out of my right now. So we can get the final, the final information on that and get that out to this group.
Okay. And I see a hand from Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Nick, I got a couple questions from residents asking about Dr. Cog tip call number 4 project. Candidly, I don't know as much about this as I should. That it was $46 million. What are good places to go for either the board or residents to learn more about upcoming projects that are under consideration?
I can put a link in the chat. So the Dr. Cog website would be that. Would be the best resource for that, and that gives you kind of all the information as the different both regional and then sub-regional forums are developing. That great reminder there. I believe Wednesday we will be voting on tip call number 3 on there, and as we go through the meeting here, I'll drop some links in the chat to give you guys more information.
Great, thank you so much.
And Julie.
Yeah, if this is going to be covered later, we can wait. But when does the ballot initiative that just passed, I assume that's under DOTI, and when does that go in the budget? Because I know you've got to collect the money from the homeowners, and I was just wondering if anyone knows like how does that work? And
yeah, so that is, I don't think it's officially passed. I think it's as good as official at this point. So we are working kind of citywide. There's a number of impacts across the city on there. It is a relatively short timeline, so I would expect to see more information on that in the coming weeks, certainly before year's end on the timeline.
Okay, thank you, Julie, Nick, and Alan. Is that a new hand?
Sorry, Nick, I am sorry. I botched the question completely. I was looking through my email again here. The person had said that the list of projects was only made available a couple hours before the last one, the last round of funding. So I guess just a request in general, if there's any way that you and your immense powers of influence on the board can encourage Dr. Cog to make those public sooner. I think folks would love to see that. So thanks again.
Very good. And I will say, so yeah, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with last time, but so this is the agenda for the month's meeting typically comes out no later than the Monday before a Wednesday meeting, and typically about a week before. I'll put in this month's on there, but yeah, I can certainly provide heads up on whatever I know.
Thanks again.
Yep.
Right on. As Nick said, we have a pretty packed agenda. I will preview the main body of topics before we hop in here. We'll be talking briefly about the NACTO Designing Cities 2023 conference occurring in Denver next year. We'll have a large update and discussion focused on Denver Moves Everyone. I believe that's why Sam is here today, amongst others. And then we'll have a brief 15-minute discussion from DOTI's Office of Community and Business Engagement before concluding tonight. With that, I believe it is Jen Hillhouse taking us into the NACTO topic. So I can pass over to you, Jen.
All right, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm the Director of Transportation Mobility Planning for DOTI, and we are very excited to, I'm trying to share my screen, Michelle, and it's telling me only a host.
You should be able to, Jen, you're a co-host, so
Okay.
if I make you
Maybe I
host,
do all panelists.
you control it all.
Right, let me.
Is it still not letting you?
Yeah, it just says who can share, only host, or all panelists. And if I click all panelists, it just stays on that little screen. Oh, I think I got it. I got it. Just had to click through a couple. Okay, sorry about that. Can you guys see my screen? No?
Yeah.
I cannot see the screen yet, no.
Let me try this again. Share. All right. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, sorry. Trying to do two things in my introduction there. So again, Jen Hillhouse, I'm the Director of Transportation Mobility Plan for DOTI. We're very excited to be hosting NACTO here in our city in May in the spring, and just wanted to give you guys a quick update. I don't think I have to take out my whole time. I know Sam has a substantial amount of information to get through, as well as OCBE. So it is, we're hosting on the 15th through the 18th. And do this manually, I guess. So those that don't know, NACTO is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. So this is really public sector officials that come together to learn about advancing, reimagining the way that we move people. And what we built our complete streets design guidelines. We are a member city of NACTO, as well as many other cities across the nation. So of course, as all planners do, we set a vision for the conference, as well as, what we hope to achieve. So really, the focus here is showcasing Denver at its best, putting us on a world and national stage, and really allowing people to walk away with tangible tools and insights that they can work to apply in their own city. We know Denver is looked to in many different arenas, from planning to implementation, and just really showing off the great work that we've completed over the last couple of decades. And it's more than transportation, right? Transportation is certainly the focus, but we all know that transportation is a part of how we build city. So we're really looking forward to thinking through how we integrate the conversation with all infrastructure. So how do we bring water quality and mobility and land use into the picture to create a great city? So something we'll be focused on. Just wanted to give you an overview of roles and responsibilities. So NACTO is a huge player here, right? They will do a lot of the work, but the city also has many commitments. And so you can see in the green, the bigger circles means the larger responsibility, but green is for NACTO. And then the blue is led by Denver. And then kind of the various of colors is the overlap. So NACTO is very focused on building the conference, all the programs, the schedules. They'll do most of the fundraising, and we're really involved on the walk shops. So developing around 40 walk shops that will be over 2 days, and again, showcasing Denver in our mobility space. And the walk shops, as I mentioned, 40 plus, will be focused on bike, walking, transit, but also that integration. So think about like 39th Avenue Greenway, where we bring all of the elements and infrastructure together to create a great space for people. And there are volunteer opportunities if you all are interested. You can volunteer, and 8 hours of volunteer will give you into the conference. And again, that's 13th through the 18th. And one other plug is that we will be kicking off with a ciclovia. So I imagine you would all be very excited about that, but that will be on the 13th. So the day before the conference, closing down our streets, focused on Broadway to really showcase how we can move people in a different way in our city. If you have any questions, there's events at NACTO if you'd like to volunteer. And then also our lead internal is Geneva Hooten, and her email is here as well that you can always get in contact with us if you guys are interested or know partners. We really want to do our workshops through community-based organizations. So having a perspective of a city official, like this is what we work through. Maybe it's also a business owner, but then also a resident and how they experienced it and engaged throughout the process to make the project what it ended up to be. So I will end there, or if there are any questions, happy to take them.
No questions for me, just super
Okay.
cool that Denver was able
Yeah.
to start this conference. So yeah,
Agreed.
congrats, and I'm looking forward to it. Anyone else questions for Jen? Nothing. All right, thank you, Jen.
Thank you for your time.
Certainly. And now we can get into our meatiest topic of the day, a Denver Moves Everyone update from Sam. I'll preface here, some of you weren't part of the advisory board when Sam last presented to us in May about the prior phase of this plan. I forget now, I'm sure we'll learn whether we're now in phase 3 or phase 4 of the plan. There's been rounds of public feedback. The last presentation back in May covered very closely a lot of the outreach that was done. All council districts, I think it was something like over 9,000 participants in feedback and response to help shape the initial framework, goals, and metrics that the plan would be judged by. With that, I'm assuming that we have some narrower, more detailed updates on what's passed since then and what's to come. Sorry if I misrepresented any of that, Sam and Riley here. With that, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Jonathan, thank you so much. Appreciate the introduction. And I'm actually going to pass the mic over to Riley, who's going to run through the presentation this evening on Denver Moves Everyone. As the project has advanced, our team has grown, and Riley's really going to be bringing this project to the finish line. But I'm here and available to answer any questions as they pop up. So yeah, Riley, I'll pass the mic over to you and we can dig in. Thank you, Riley.
Sounds good, and thanks so much, Sam. My name is Riley Lemie, and I am a principal city planner with the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, so on the planning team. I'm going to give you a brief update on our Denver Moves Everyone plan, which is DME for short, and is our long-range strategic transportation plan. We're in a really exciting phase of DME as we are into our 4th phase of public engagement on the project. So we're really excited to be able to give you a quick update today. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Julie, who is going to be helping to facilitate a couple of questions today. So I'll pass the mic over to her and let her run through what we're going to be covering.
Hi, thank you so much, Riley. I'm Julie Skeen, and I'm the consultant outreach lead for this project. And we are super excited to come back and talk to you a little bit more. As Jonathan mentioned, this is focused on sort of the outreach side. What are we hearing from people? What are we asking from people? We're going to talk a little bit about, remind you of what the project is from a big picture, talk a little bit about the last phase. What did we hear from people? And then really dig into the phase we're in now, which is phase 4, which is sort of our final big outreach push to get feedback from the public. So we're very excited, and we actually have some questions for you tonight as well. So next slide, please. I think we're going to start off, and I'm going to probably, Riley and I are going to tag team this, so I'm going to hand it back to him. We're going to talk a little bit about overall where we are in the project and what we're trying to accomplish, just to reset a baseline with you guys, and then we'll dive right into the more specifics related to the outreach results. Riley?
All right, thanks so much, Julie. So again, we'll start by reminding everyone what Denver Moves Everyone is, which again is our long-range strategic transportation plan. So that's looking out between now and 2050 and identifying the types of transportation improvements that we need to make in order to build a world-class transportation system for Denver. And so this is a little bit different than some of the other modal specific plans that we have completed in the past that look at a specific mode of transportation. Denver Moves Everyone is really the plan that's bringing everything together and looking at the entire transportation system as a whole. And so it's looking at not only sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure, but it's also looking at signals and major multimodal improvements to different streets all around the city. And then it's looking at intersection improvements, how we operate and maintain our transportation system, and then prioritizing the improvements that are needed that are going to have the greatest impact where they are needed the most. So again, this is really looking at the entire transportation system as a whole. So we started with identifying, with the community, identifying a vision and goals that will help us to be able to align our transportation investments into the future. And because we have a limited budget on an annual basis, it's really important that we prioritize transportation improvements with our limited dollars in the short term that are really going to have the largest impacts or the greatest positive impacts in the areas of the city that need those improvements the most. And then finally, DME is also helping to identify the long-term policies and improvements that are needed to really be able to meet our goals and meet the community needs between now and 2050. So not only is it identifying where short-term improvements are needed, but also looking out into the long term and really understanding what that long-term need looks like for us. So DME has culminated over a period of 16 months. This has been a very community involved plan that started off in the summer of 2021, where we worked with the community to identify a cohesive vision and goals that really reflect what Denver Wright's values are when it comes to transportation. And so that was first identified in our what we called phase one. We have engaged the community over 4 separate phases of engagement. And as I mentioned, we are just now starting to kick off our 4th phase of engagement. The second phase of DME was really defining the roadmap for how we want to get there. So we heard from Denver Wrights what their hopes are and what their concerns are for our transportation system and what a good transportation system looks like as we think into the long term. And then our 3rd phase of engagement, which we'll highlight in just a few minutes, was where we asked the community what their priorities were when it comes to overall transportation and how we are spending and investing our transportation dollars to improve the system. And then our 4th phase that we'll talk about today as well is where kind of everything culminates together and where we actually get to present the project recommendations. And so what this means is how are we prioritizing our work now that we understand what the goals are, and we understand what the need is, how are we prioritizing our work in the short term so that, again, we really prioritize the projects and the improvements that are going to provide the greatest benefit in the neighborhoods of the city that need it the most. So I'm going to pass it back to Julie, who's going to summarize some of the outreach that we've done. And I will say that, as I've said before, this has been a really robust community engagement process. That we are excited just the number of residents that we've been able to engage through this process. And I think this provides a good, sets the bar high for how we can continue to engage the community on future projects. So Julie, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Riley. So this is just kind of a snapshot of where we are to date through these past 3 phases. Again, we've just initiated phase 4, so those numbers aren't counted in here yet. But as you'll see, we've really had a robust outreach program, and we have heard from so many citizens. And just a reminder, I know you heard this last time we get together, but we have 3 basic components of our outreach. So we're doing online tools. So you see, we've got over 10,000 folks that have participated online, but not everybody's going to get it. We're not going to get to everybody that way. So we also have partners and committees where we're bringing groups together, a lot of, industry insiders, focus groups, different committees. And then finally, we have our grassroots outreach. And, the really important piece of this is that we're always looking between the 3 and looking to fill gaps, especially with that grassroots. So, we've engaged a whole bunch of social media, folks through social media. We have been putting a little bit money to boost these social media ads, and it's had a tremendous effect. If you see 151,000 folks have interacted with us on social media. We've had over 80 grassroots events, over 5,000, almost 6,000 surveys completed. So this has been a really, really robust effort. And if you go to the next slide, the key with those 3 different components on how they interact together. So this is just an example, but what we have is an interactive map, and we track that. And we track not only what sort of feedback we're getting, but where we're getting that feedback. And so in this interactive map, you can zoom in and out, and you can look at the different geographic areas and say, and this is what we've looked at each step of the way when it comes to outreach, to make sure that if we have a big gap, then that's when we come in and we say, wow, we've got to get out to some events in Montbello or in Green Valley Rancher, some of these other areas. So, we feel very proud of the fact that we've touched and we've gotten feedback from all 78 neighborhoods. And again, we've been really focusing on the inverted L and making sure that we're obtaining that feedback in those areas. So this is just an example, sort of an interactive map. And then the next slide, I wanted to pause here and I wanted to say thank you, because this group, you may not remember because this was late last year. This group really got us engaged and got us started on this concept of CBOPs, community-based outreach partners. So special thanks to Tim Sandos and then this whole group. You guys at the end of last year said, have you thought about engaging communities and maybe even paying some community members to help us get out there in the outreach? And we said, wow, that's a great idea. And so in addition to what we've been doing, we brought on a different firm that came in. They hired 8 community-based outreach partners. They trained them. They got them out in the field. They gathered their data. It was a pilot project. It was small, but it was a pilot project, but it worked great. And so, we're really excited about this. They really focused on sort of hyper-local events in very diverse communities. And they were out and they were able to tell the story from their perspective, because these are actual community members that these decisions and this whole project is going to impact. So again, just wanted to pause for a second, recognize your support, recognize that this was a fantastic idea. We have piloted on this project and it is our hope. We would love to see the city, county of Denver and all your different groups, continue with a process like this, because it went very, very well. Riley, I think I'm handing it back to you. Talk a little bit more about phase 3.
All right, thanks so much, Julie. So on our phase 3, the next slide here. So on our phase 3 of engagement, we were really focused on hearing from the priorities of Denverites when it comes to how we are investing and spending our transportation dollars. And so we engaged the community on a number of different questions where we got to use a tool to ask Denverites their priorities when it comes to transportation investments and where they're willing to make trade-offs in order to achieve those priorities. And so what we did, and we'll walk through this tool a little bit, is identify what those priorities were. And the reason why this is important is because we, again, have a limited amount of funding that we get on an annual basis for transportation. And so it's really important that we understand what the priorities are of Denverites as we program those different spending buckets. And so this is going to, what we heard in phase 3 is going to help us, has continued to help us as we make recommendations in our 4th phase of Denver Moves Everyone, and understand how we're programming those transportation dollars. So just to walk you through a little bit about the questions that we asked. So Denver, we can kind of think of it as we have 4 main buckets when it comes to how we're spending our transportation dollars. One of those is operating Denver's system. So that means all of the people, so the staff, the technology, everything that it takes to operate Denver's transportation system and make it work for everyone. A second large component of that is maintaining the transportation system. And so that means everything that is done to keep our roadways into a state of good repair, repairing a signal, for example, if something quits working. So a lot of, again, making sure that everything is functioning and working. And then our next category is improving the system. And so that meant taking the existing transportation infrastructure, but making it work better. And so an example of that is if we had a bike lane that is built using low-cost materials, if we were to upgrade that to permanent materials like concrete, that would be considered improving the transportation system, because again, it's improving something that already existed. And then under our last bucket, we had expanding the system, and that means building new infrastructure that didn't exist before. And so thinking for this one, that would be building new sidewalks that didn't exist before, building new bikeways, adding new infrastructure that we didn't previously have installed. And so we also asked, as part of that phase, or that part of that phase 3 engagement tool, whether Denverites would prioritize expanding or improving the transportation system under 6 different categories. So when we look at sidewalks, bikeways, bus routes, streets, improving intersections or crossings or green spaces, we asked if it was more important to improve, so basically upgrading and making what we have better, or expanding, so building new infrastructure that wasn't already there before. What we really heard is a lot of people, or it was really important to expand our transportation system, but also to improve it as well. I think the key takeaway from this was that it's important to Denverites to have a world-class, high-quality transportation system, and that is something that we are working to align how we're spending our transportation dollars to really provide that world-class transportation system. And so some of the, again, the kind of the key takeaways from here, you can see how Denverites ranked each of these different categories under either the improve or the expand category. So again, just really seeing a lot of people saying to improve. So for bus service, especially, we have a lot of great transit infrastructure already, but really improving that, whether that's making it more frequent or making it so that the buses don't get stuck in delays, that kind of thing. Same thing with sidewalks. It was really a priority to take what we had and make that better. Under bikeways, I think we heard more on the expanding, so just a need to continue to build out that network as we continue to expand biking, or as we continue to expand more safe and comfortable streets for biking across the city. One of the great things that we were able to do from this is understand, so this is looking at, on this slide, is looking at improvements from a citywide perspective, or kind of the priorities from a citywide perspective, but we are able to look at from a neighborhood perspective and understand what's important. We recognize that the overall need is different depending on the neighborhood that you're in. And so it's really important for us to be able to understand how those priorities might change depending on where you're at in the city. And so this tool also gives us the ability to look into that a little bit further. So I think we're going to pause here in case there was any questions, if I'm remembering correctly, and then we have still a little bit more. We'll jump into phase 4 and we'll highlight what phase 4 entails. So
Any thoughts, any questions up until this point?
I'll give it a second here for people to think and maybe raise hands.
Yes, I'd like to ask the question. I need a copy of what you're saying here in regards to the Montbello area. How it's because I've not seen any of these things that you're suggesting here at all in this particular area, and as well as the Green Valley Ranch area. So I'd like to get and talk with you, maybe perhaps offline, and let's see what's going on as far as the mobility factor, and especially for senior citizens. I don't see it. And so I'd like to talk with you offline if we can, and get that information, especially to my constituents. And thank you.
absolutely, we're happy to talk offline and to get you we'll be able to share this presentation as well. So
Any other thoughts or questions? You guys are excited about phase 4, we can tell. We appreciate that.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's move along.
all right, so we'll jump onto phase 4. And one of the exciting things about this 4th phase of Denver Moves Everyone is that we'll actually be able to see how transportation improvements are being recommended to be prioritized. And so in areas of the city where where there's infrastructure that is lacking, or maybe where you haven't seen improvements that you would like to see, this will offer a transparent process to understand where those improvements are being recommended. So we've talked a little bit before, I think in previous presentations, the 5 goal areas of DME. As I spoke to before, these were community driven, and these reflect the values of Denverites when it comes to transportation. And so the 5 goal areas are mobility, safety, sustainability, community, and quality. And under each of those 5 goal areas, there are some kind of embedded themes underneath each of those. So mobility is talking about affordable travel. It's also talking about having convenient travel options, and then recognizing the importance of how we handle freight within the transportation system. Safety is talking not just about safety traveling, but also personal security and safety. And then sustainability, of course, is meaning climate and the environment. Community is talking about having connected land uses. So understanding the fact that our transportation system and how we interact with it is really closely related with how the adjacent land uses, and really integrating those two things together. And then quality, again, is really where that building a world-class transportation system comes in. And of course, equity is something that has woven as a common theme throughout each of these goals, and is a critical component of DME that is prioritized and shaping how we will be prioritizing and where we'll be prioritizing these transportation improvements. So I want to highlight, as a part of DME, we have some tools that are going to help shape and influence how we are prioritizing our projects. And this is really important. As I mentioned before, these 5 goal areas are going to drive how we're prioritizing our work. And as we think in the short term, so between now and 2030, it's really important that we're prioritizing improvements that are going to help us advance those goals, or have the greatest ability to advance those goals. And so a first component of this was compiling all of the various projects that we've had from previous plans. So this planning process, of course, is not starting from scratch. We know that there has been previous modal plans. The Neighborhood Planning Initiative, or NPI for short, those identify new transportation improvements. And so we are continuously growing the list of projects that gets longer every year, even as we build new projects and take things off the list, that universe of projects continues to grow. And so something that was new as a part of DME is this, what's called the project database, where we were able to compile all of the projects that have ever been recommended from a previous plan. And it's over 6,000 projects. So this is a very large database. But again, this is essentially one place that all of these different project ideas will be able to live. And then this third component, again, was being able to score all 6,000 projects. So I mentioned it was really important for us to be able to make sure that as we think of our constrained need, where we have a limited budget, prioritizing the projects that are going to have the greatest ability to meet our goals. And so we have new tools that are available to us that help us. We essentially scored all 6,000 projects that have, again, we now have the ability to rank those projects and prioritize them based on those ones that would rank the highest. And then another important component of this was also to understand where are the needs the greatest. So we have recognized that in certain neighborhoods, there are more needs than others, or there's neighborhoods that have historically been underinvested in. And so how do we work to remedy that by making those improvements in the neighborhoods where the need is the greatest? And so that leads us to our final step, where we were nominating projects, again, that are going to, that our data is showing us is going to advance our goals of mobility and safety and quality and sustainability, and then also meet those needs in the parts of the city where the need is the greatest. And that is what has resulted in our draft plan of short-term improvements, and that is what is available to view to the public in our 4th phase of engagement. So I want to talk a little bit about the different areas that DOTI spends money in, or different types of transportation projects. There is about 7 of these that I'll talk through, but these, again, as I mentioned before, DME is looking at our entire transportation system as a whole. And so these are the different icons on the screen represent the different areas that we make transportation improvements in. And so just want to highlight each of these real quick. Under walking and rolling, that of course means sidewalk infrastructure, but it also means curb ramps. It can also mean making improvements at intersections to make it easier to cross the street. Under biking and micromobility, this means new bikeways. It could mean improving streets like neighborhood bikeways that are shared streets that are designed to be able to prioritize biking. Micromobility, I know this is kind of our fancy transportation term that we use, but really what that means is scooters. It could mean electric skateboards. It could mean e-bikes. And so making improvements so that there is a place in the transportation system for those different users of the roadway to be able to travel safely and not have to be on the sidewalk. Transit is all of the infrastructure to make transit more frequent and reliable. So that could mean bus rapid transit projects, or it could mean dedicated space on the roadway that provides, gives transit its own space or makes it more reliable. Traffic signals and crossings, this one's pretty self-explanatory, but just means traffic lights. It could also mean different signals that are specifically for pedestrians or for bicycles to be able to help them be able to safely navigate intersections. Bridges and structures, this is bridges, this is also overpasses or underpasses. And so you can think of these as improvements that are helping to address barriers, whether it's barriers that were created by the highway system or barriers over railroads or rivers. So again, those addressing new connections in our system is what is covered by bridges and structures. Under streets, alleys, stripings, and signs, so this is all of the roadway markings. This is also looking at, sometimes we make major improvements to streets or rebuild them, like what we did on Brighton Boulevard several years ago. This also, under the same category, could mean signage. So all the signage like wayfinding signage or the speed limit signs that you see, or even street signs. And then finally, under streetscape and curb space, I think of this as everything that happens at the edge of the curb. And so this is green infrastructure like trees or landscaping, but it also could mean curb uses like loading or drop-offs or spaces for delivery vehicles. So I wanted to kind of frame these different investment areas. Again, these are the different areas of the transportation system that we make, or that we spend money in order to deliver a new, or to deliver a expanded and improved transportation system. And we are at the point now as a part of DME where we have our priorities for each of these different areas that we are ready to share with the public. So what we're asking, or what we're essentially sharing with the public as a part of our Phase 4 engagement tool is again what the prioritized transportation improvements that are recommended for the short term for each of these different areas. So I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for just a second so that I'm going to share a different screen so that way I can kind of give you a quick tour of what the tool looks like. So again, that is denvermoveseveryone.com, and we encourage you to share this with your constituents. Just want to make sure before I go on though that you can see my internet browser and not the PowerPoint.
Looks good.
All right, awesome. So again, denvermoveseveryone.com, that is our similar to Phase 3. This is our online digital engagement tool. I do want to walk through, there is a quick video on this in case you want to watch that, or provides a 3-minute introduction to DME. So just provides a nice recap. This also provides information about where we are at. And then a reminder of those 5 goal areas. And you can also click on those to understand what each of the goal areas are very broad, but this provides a little bit more detail on what those are, so what they mean. And a reminder of that shared vision that was established through community outreach. Next piece of the tool. This is a graphic that I just presented, but through DME and through the analysis and the tools that we have, we're able to understand what we need are for each of these different areas. We're able to understand what good looks like. So between now and 2050, what do we need to do for each of those areas to build that world-class transportation system that we heard is important to Denverites? So for example, if I click on signals, this provides a little bit of an explanation of what we mean when we say signals and crossings, and what DOTI's responsibility is as far as improving the transportation system. And then it also provides some information on between now and by 2050, what does that look like if we were to really build out all of our signal infrastructure? What does that ultimately look like? Does the same thing under walking and rolling and under biking and micromobility. So again, really identifying what the need is to build out a complete transportation system. So this is looking at the very long term on this slide, but as I've alluded to before, we are also looking at the near term. So thinking about between now and 2030, that it's again, when we're thinking about with our limited transportation dollars in a constrained environment, we have to prioritize our work. And we again have prioritized our work based on those 5 goal areas that I spoke to earlier. And through the analysis, these are the recommendations of how and where we're going to be prioritizing those, how we're recommending to prioritize those transportation improvements in the short term. I do want to highlight that this is draft, and so through community engagement and what we hear as feedback as a part of this 4th phase or phase 4 engagement tool, we will be refining this over before this gets released as part of the draft final plan. But just to be able to walk through a few things on here, this specifically will call out some of the major multimodal projects. And so these are areas where we're really making large improvements to the streets that might benefit all modes, whether it be transit or biking and walking. And so some of those specific projects are actually called out specifically on this map. And then highlight a few more. You can click through each of these and it shows essentially where the recommendation is to make improvements, again, in the short term, and where we should be focusing our, where we plan to focus those transportation dollars. So looking at the signals category, for example, this means building new traffic lights, but it also means making new signalized crossings for both pedestrians and bicycles. And so one of the things that you'll really see highlighted on here, one of our goals, of course, is safety. And we also know that there are areas of the city that there is a lot of work to do to improve safety, especially on the high injury network. And so what you see reflected on this map are kind of the areas that are really bright on the screen, are showing those areas where where we want to align our work to improve signals, especially along the high injury network. And so you'll see Colfax highlighted on here, Sheridan, Federal. You'll see those kind of popping up as those priorities for making those improvements or making those investments. And then same thing, another one that I will highlight is the bridges and structures map. So again, as I spoke to before, equity is a common theme that is critical as a part of DME, and we're really trying to use this plan to work through where there are current inequities in the transportation system. And one of the priorities for DME is really, as we're thinking about where we want to invest new infrastructure in bridges, addressing where there's barriers, whether it was created by the highway system or from railroads, addressing where there are barriers and where those can be improved, so that those are not barriers and that our communities and neighborhoods are more connected. And so you'll see where in the short term, where those improvements are being recommended to build new bridges or overpasses or underpasses, there's really kind of focused along where you'll see I focus really heavily along I-70 as well as along I-25, and then in some of those areas of the city where there are railroads that also create barriers and challenges to being able to connect in the transportation system. So I won't go through each of these in details, but this does again explain within each of these areas, you can see what those and what the draft recommendations look like. You can also click on this up here, this link up here, which will provide a PDF that basically has this in a more of a list form instead of the map form. And then finally, as a part of the phase 4, we want to hear whether or not we're on the right track as far as where we're making these recommendations for where we should be prioritizing our investments. And so we do have a quick survey at the end that asks those questions. So again, really asking to what degree that folks that are taking the survey feel we have these transportation improvements will really help traveling in their neighborhood. And then we will, if we find that we're really missing the mark somewhere, or we are finding that we're not making that there's something missing, we're able to go back and refine that as we continue to work through as we continue to wrap up DME and wrap up our 4th phase of engagement. So with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And actually, I'm going to highlight this slide that has I'm going to highlight this slide that actually has those same questions. And I think, Julie, you were going to help ask those questions.
Sounds great. Looks like we have one question from District 11.
Yes, I was just wondering, had you guys considered the on-ramp from 56th Avenue onto Pena Boulevard from Green Valley Ranch? It's an awful lot of traffic jams there. It's a long, long wait right there to get on Pena Boulevard. Have you guys considered perhaps opening up another lane to get onto Pena Boulevard?
Great question. So as a part of DME, we are looking at specific projects, and I believe that 56th is one of the projects that we are looking at making improvements on. That was one of the projects that we were recommending to prioritize so that we improve travel for all modes. And the map that I described a little bit might provide a little bit more detail about what's included as a part of that. But yeah, that is, I think, certainly one that is ranked higher on our list of improvements.
Thank you.
Terrific, thanks.
Hey, Bradley, before we hop into the interactive feedback questions, I had a couple of questions about what you just presented to help me set it in correct context as to what I was seeing there. Those sort of heat map diagrams that you were showing, where we say, hey, here's some crossing investments, here's some signalized investments. How are we supposed to interpret for particularly things like crossings, like darker shades on the heat map? I know, I think it was down near like the Lakewood border. There was like one giant circle with like a hot red. I mean, I doubt what you're actually saying is we're putting 40 signals in this like one area. Is it a bigger signal? Like what does that mean?
Yeah, great questions. So that's really highlighting where there's the greatest need. And so where you see the brighter circles are essentially saying that there is more need there for making improvements, and that as a result, that's where we would be spending a greater focus. And so the kind of similar, if there's an area where you see that really highlighting on the map, it just goes kind of highlighting that we know that the need there for making improvements or for improving signal infrastructure is the is the greatest. And when you zoom in a little bit more on the maps, you can zoom in, the colors actually start to, they will change, or the map will change a little bit. So this is kind of when you zoom out at a more high level, then it's showing where there's the greatest need and where we should be, where we'll be kind of essentially focusing the greatest number of our greatest amount of our resources.
Okay, so although the description says it shows existing bond and city funded projects as well as new priority locations, it sounds like the map is more heavily weighted to future needs, more so than existing items that are already, you know, being solved for per se.
Yeah, so both are on there. It's really meant to show the need and where we're going to be prioritizing in the short term. And when I say short term, kind of looking out between now and 2030. But we recognize that there are bond projects that haven't gotten started yet, that are already in the works or have already been programmed. And so we don't want to confuse anyone by leaving those projects off the map. And so this is showing where those improvements are already planned or programmed from a bond perspective, and then also where there is there's the additional need, thinking out to 2030.
Awesome, thank you. And I think one more question just for my own wayfinding before we get to those, and any other questions to help people understand here. I see you've assessed the next 6 years as the definition of short-term plans. As you've said, this plan extends to 2050. Will there in this phase be an assessment and scoring of medium-term projects and long-term? Are we bucketing all of them, or is it just we're bucketing and scoring short-term and the rest of the aperture is sort of open from there?
Yeah, so we're also looking at our the midterm. So as we're thinking about capital improvements to be making in the short term, we're also looking at the midterm and then in the long term. So as we kind of think, midterm is looking out more towards like the next 15 to 20 years, long term being the overall needs. So when we're thinking out as the long term, it's what is that between now all the way to 2050, and what that's really identifying is the need, and then we again through that are figuring out how we're going to get there and how we're going to meet that overall long-term need. This is also intended to be something that's working where it can get updated as needed, because we know that priorities change, sometimes new funding opportunities become available. And so this is something that's not meant to be static, and that we would be updating likely, as we move through the initial 6-year plan, intended to be updated so that we make sure that as new projects are coming on, or new projects have been built, that we are continuing to reprioritize our work and update the priorities.
Awesome, thank you. And it looks like we have a hand from Gary Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. Say, I noticed on the slide that has the major multimodal walking, rolling, bike, micromobility, that where the maps are.
Mm-hmm.
You've got quite a bit of specificity on the major multimodal projects, but all the rest of them are not very specific. So I have two questions. One is, how do we, when do you plan on becoming more specific so we can react to the specific project?
Yeah, great question. So to start, some of the projects are specific, and that is the major multimodal ones where we are making major capital improvements to a specific corridor. And so that's why something like the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit project is going to show on there. And then the heat maps are really intended to kind of show priority locations, as far as how we're going to invest. I might pull in Sam to the second part of the question, though, just in terms of when that's going to be available to see like specific intersection location, or specific location.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary, for that question, and Riley for kicking off the response. So I think the primary nuance between major multimodal projects, and then the rest of the investments, which are categorized in the other categories, is that major multimodal projects, though the what we call the scope for that project is defined. So they have definition of what do we want to build eventually. And those projects are either, we've done that preliminary scoping, or design has progressed for that project. And so we have more definitions so we can be more specific in details out about exactly the components of those projects and where they exist on the map. Now, for the other investment categories, many of those projects identified, and Jonathan made the good point that we are including, existing funded projects, but also that new pipeline of priorities. The new funded projects, not all of those are defined, and we have internal policies and guidelines that every project has to go through before it becomes what we call a real project. It's going to move to design. So I'll use signals as an example. So on that heat map, we've got a lot of heat, different parts of town demonstrating there's a likely need to build new traffic signals to provide more crossings. But not everywhere where we have heat will it meet our guidelines for warranting the construction of a new signal. So we need to study those lots of locations where those heat exist to identify precisely where the intersection exists that we do then need to improve. And then once that specific project moves from that conceptual, we think we need a signal here, to yes, it's cleared the warrant and now we're going to move it to construction, is the point at which we can start sharing that information out with the broader public. So I hope that answers the question of really the heat maps are focusing where we need to study and do our work. A proportion of those will move into the design and the construction phase, but it's really to represent, and what we want your feedback on is that heat for those investment classes concentrated where you think that there's a need for new signals, for new bridges, or new transit improvements, et cetera, in the short term.
Sure. Now, having said that, which is a great segue to my last question, how do we respond to you with ideas and identification of projects that we know about?
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pass it back to Riley. He's got the script for that one.
Yep.
Thank you.
Another great question. So at the end of the survey, not only is there a question about to what degree does the feedback, or sorry, to what degree do the improvements help meet the goals, but there's also an open-ended question. So that's asking, if there's anything missing. And so if there's a project that's really glaring in your mind that you're not seeing represented on here, you can provide that in those open-ended comments.
Thank you, Gary. Oh,
Thanks.
did you have any more, Gary? I just wanted, there is one question also in the chat from Jamie Lewis. Hi, Jamie. He asked, are we using crash data to ensure that those areas based on the crash data are getting attention first?
Yeah, great question. So, and the answer is yes. Denver Moves Everyone is a very data-driven plan. And so a lot of different factors, including crash data, went into how and where we're prioritizing the specific need, and specifically for safety. Crash information was one of the factors, or one of the data points that we looked at that's driving the priorities.
Terrific, thank you. Other questions? And Gary, if I cut you off, you tell me, I apologize. Sometimes it's tough on Zoom.
Okay, I know I've had a lot, but I have one more.
Please.
As we talked about these short-term projects, especially major multimodal that are really big, lots of years of funding, bonding sources, et cetera. Are these resulting diagrams for some of the categories or all of the category? Are those priority orders being determined and taking into account what funding sources might be available in those timeframes? I mean, 6 years is actually, it sounds long, but it's a very short time frame when it comes to big projects. So I was wondering to what extent we're saying these are a priority, not just because crash data and other sources and equity measures say we should do it, but it's also, we think, pretty realistic.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we did base this, as we're thinking in the short term, we did base this off of what has what has been historical funding sources or our historical funding availability. And so we did an analysis to look back at the last decade or so. On average, I think it was actually more the last 6 years, on average, how much funding do we receive from various sources, whether it's from bond, whether it's from our capital discretionary funding, or from other sources like the Dr. Cog tip grants. And based on all of that, we were able to kind of summarize all of that together and determine appropriate kind of spending amounts for each of those different investment classes that I showed on the previous slide. And based on that, this is sort of saying this is saying that what we anticipate getting on an annual basis, again, based on those historical spending levels, and then trying to align or program those priorities based on that.
Awesome, thank you. So I know you're trying to get to the next phase here of questioning. Anyone else in the room have questions or hands before we move on? Sounds like no.
Oh,
wait, sorry, Jake.
Jonathan, I thought you were making me sneak real in under the wire there. No, the one question I had is, you'd mentioned that a lot of this is based on traditional funding sources. I've got to admit, maybe it's personal preference and hating picking trade-offs. But when going through Denver Moves Everyone surveys myself, I had concerns that in some of the way that the questions were structured, I could understand where they were coming from, but I wonder if we're missing an opportunity to get an understanding of where the citizenry of the city of Denver is willing to improve and maintain together, right? Like, I think that there was kind of this pitch trade-off based on where traditional funding had been. And I think that we know we have, incoming federal dollars, and we know we have a community that has consistently on the ballot voted for infrastructure improvements in the city from the department when they're not seeing them. So it seems like we have a lot of buy-in and maybe not actual budget, but potential budget. And I'm kind of wondering if one outcome out of this process will be, here's what Denver Moves Everyone looks like under the current plan, right? Like under the current funding levels. And here's kind of, DOTI's bold new vision for what Denver could look like. And can we link it to that and say, hey, this is what we want. We are so ready for the GO bonds next round because we're going to get them for these sweet DOTI projects. Maybe we have a little gap that we need to go fill with the voters. But we're going to go get that done because this is the right vision. We've done the right work on this. And I guess that's just kind of the concern I had is I've seen this department do incredible work, and I don't want the potential of its current budget to be the limiting factor when we know we have a city bought into doing more.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the goals of DME is to help us identify the overall need. And so based on that, we are able to identify where we need more funding in order to be able to meet our goals in the long term. So being able to identify where we're lacking in funding sources, for example, to be able to meet that overall funding need for each of those different categories. One of the advantages of DME, as well as that we're also identifying specific projects to advance for study. A lot of the projects, especially like major multimodal projects, require a lot of study and design and prep. And by identifying those projects that we can move forward into planning, it makes those projects more shovel ready as new funding sources become available, like bond or like the infrastructure bill, for example. And so this is, again, one of the advantages of DME is being able to prioritize those projects that we should be moving forward with to advance as additional funding sources become available, but then identifying that where there's needs, where there's gaps in our current funding. And while DME is not necessarily identifying those new funding sources, it's helping to demonstrate to us as a department and to us as a city where there are gaps in what we're able to fund. And so then that's kind of like a first step for us to be able to remedy that in the future.
Okay, but we don't think those questions are hindering our ability to accomplish it. I just want to make sure that we're covered on that.
Jake, when you were articulating that, I actually think you hit on a great opportunity that Denver Moves Everyone's provides. And we're kind of challenged with two things to deal with. We need to be realistic about how we program our short-term dollars because we don't have unlimited resources. And what this work has really reinforced is we need to be very strategic in how we program those dollars. We need to make sure that every dollar spent is getting the maximum return on investment for safety, for mobility, to addressing climate change, et cetera. Now, in the same vein, we need to understand what that world-class Denver looks like. And Riley talked about it briefly in his presentation, but there's a great slide on the online tool that demonstrates that long-term vision to create a world-class transportation system across our sidewalk network, our bike lane network, signals, the list goes on. And so I encourage you to take some time with that. And in the final report, we'll be presenting both. We'll be saying, with our constrained budget that we know we're going to have in the short term, this is how we plan to program those dollars. But then to build that world-class Denver, this is what it's going to take. So we need to be operating with both principles to really be strategic, both in the short term and the long term.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, last call for any questions. We do have, what you see on the slide are the questions specifically in the tool. Really looking at, do we hit the nail on the head in making sure that we're helping achieve our goals? Is it going to help you travel sustainably and comfortably? And then as we discussed with Jonathan, there's that spot to say, hey, you're missing this project. We would really love to engage in it. Want to be respectful of your time. I know it's 5:30 and you still have a bunch on the agenda. We've got a couple of slides left, but please, please, please get on the tool. We want to hear from you. Anything you can do to get the word out about the tool, denvermoveseveryone.com. And I'll also say you can also reach out directly to Sam and Riley as you have questions, obviously with this group as well. But really love your feedback. Really love any opportunities you can have to share this would be fantastic. So the next slide, just very high level. We've only gotten a few responses, about 215 to date, but just giving you a sense of those first two questions. If you look, the 4s and 5s are the feel strongly in support of, and we feel like we're heading in the right direction, especially really for that. Do you think these improvements will help you travel safely, sustainably, and comfortably? So we'll obviously be breaking down this data in a lot more detail. This is just kind of a little quick snapshot of what we're seeing so far. So with that, feel free to ask any more questions, but we had another couple of slides. So where do we go from here? We finish, help us get the word out, denvermoveseveryone.com, anything we can do. And then if you go to the next slide, really then in early 2023, all this effort is going to culminate into a final plan. And we are going to post it for 30 days. It's going to be on the project website. There'll be a virtual open house. So you can kind of go through and look at all the different phases and all the different things we've done. And it'll, the final piece will be this plan that you'll get to actually respond to directly. And then our final slide is, sort of our next steps, that we've got the community engagement through November. So that's the phase 4 stuff we've just discussed. We're going to use that feedback to tweak things, to basically say, okay, did we hit the nail on the head? Did we miss anything? We'll modify it. And then we'll have that draft plan released in 2023. Jonathan asked when the survey phase closes, right before Thanksgiving. So we have another week or so. So, around I think it's the 23rd, because the Thanksgiving is the 24th this year. It's very early this year. So end of next week. So any help that you can provide in getting the word out. And that concludes our presentation, but we certainly have time to answer any more questions or get any other thoughts. We really appreciate your time.
Questions in the room? Sounds like none. All right. Thank you for the deep introduction here. We'll be sure to get out and spread the word. I know there's just about a little over a week to go here before this survey phase closes. So I'll look forward to getting this message out in my neighborhoods at least, and I hope the rest of this advisory board does the same. With the conclusion of that topic, I will move over to the Office of Community and Business Engagement. I believe, Rebecca, that's you.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate
Yep,
it.
it's Tim, me, and Kayla. So I'll pull up our presentation and Tim's gonna start us off.
Okay, well, Rebecca's bringing this up. The Office of Community and Business Engagement is focusing on our outreach and interaction with the community on behalf of DOTI. I think DME through CIG has just shown a great opportunity for how they've done this work and what we're trying to do in reaching out to the citizens of Denver and engaging all the people in the community about the work that we're doing. Our mission for OCBE is to lead DOTI in its, if we go, in its proactive connectivity to collaborate and build relationships with Denver's residents and our businesses so that we create an equitable and on-time project outcome that really reflects the vision and the values and the diversity of our communities. Our vision is to be the trusted partner for designing, delivering effective engagement services with and for Denver's unique communities. Now we've got the team that's going to go through our whole presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to Rebecca Draper, who is the manager of the Office of Community and Business Engagement, talk about our mitigation, collaboration, and empowerment.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks to everyone for inviting us here.
Rebecca, before
Yep.
we, can we change your presentation?
Are you seeing the preview?
Yeah,
or
do the swap again.
Yep, there you go. Thank you.
I switched it earlier today and I must have switched it back. Okay, well, anyways, thank you so much for having us here tonight. I know a number of our team have attended the meetings regularly and listened in and just absolutely are so happy to have the chance to present what we're doing in OCBE tonight. So in terms of OCBE's areas of focus, or really more specifically our core functions, we are providing a department-wide strategic framework for and practice the implementation of proactive, consistent, and equitable community engagement throughout all project phases. In addition, we're building community capacity, quality of life, and safety through education programs and partnerships. And so a little sort of glimpse of who OCBE is. I know we have a short period of time here tonight, so I'm not going to go through our entire team, but what I really want to say is that each person that's identified on our organizational chart represents a truly important piece of the puzzle that makes it possible for OCBE to fulfill our core functions. So we're a relatively small team of about 20 combined full and part-time staff, and that's when we're fully staffed. We're doing pretty well there right now, but you can see the orange areas we're working on recruiting. That's a big push that we're working on right now. But at any rate, we still feel quite mighty, and we look forward to expanding our reach as we move forward into 2023 and beyond. One of the ways that we are working toward achieving that goal is utilizing a geographically based cross-division approach, where we will be teaming up our currently 3 community connectors and our 2 community engagement specialists with the design divisions, community designers, and area engineers. So we're working on putting a plan in place to do that now, and really looking forward to a very cohesive partnership in 2023. So looking at some of our tactics, it's really how do we do what we do? We're constantly striving to improve the way that DOTI engages with the community. And in order to support that effort, we utilize a host of outreach tactics that are designed to fit differing needs of projects and programs and the unique needs of Denver's many neighborhoods. So you can see several of the strategies shown on the slide, and really through these means, we can inform the community of the work that we have done and plan to do. We can consult with key community members on important projects. We're able to involve the larger community in the process, and also collaborate with community leaders on special projects, as well as with other DOTI groups on priority initiatives. What we really love to do is partner both internally across DOTI divisions and city departments, as well as with the community members that we serve. And our goal is to do that as early as possible in a project or program's life cycle in order to help us tailor solutions to neighborhood needs. So we're working on gathering and leveraging data, establishing relationships with community members, really acting as consultants on outreach internally, and working to develop, manage, and strengthen all of those relationships. Communication is key to our ability to build trust. So we're really improving how we do that communication internally and externally, as well as facilitating the community's access to us to ensure a strong foundation of trust is built and maintained. On to our next slide, our program and project support. So we really wanted to take most of our time to focus on a few of our tactics that we see as most fundamental in terms of our outreach and engagement tools here at OCBE, starting with our community advisory groups, or for short, CAGs. And they really serve as an important and ongoing tool for communicating and collaborating with community members about DOTI programs and projects, but also other city department programs and projects. And we have here tonight with us, Chris Callanan. He is one of our community engagement specialists, and he in particular focuses on CAG management for the office. The CAGs themselves are designed to convene a diverse group of community members within a particular region or set of neighborhoods to inform, educate, and collaborate on some of DOTI's, as well as, again, other city departments' major planning and infrastructure projects that are impacting their particular area. And by sharing information with the community across a number of departments, we are able to help alleviate the community fatigue that we so often hear as feedback from the community, because there are so many opportunities out there and asks for their time and feedback. And I think it's been even exaggerated since COVID has become a force, that there's even more asks of the community. So this does help alleviate that a bit. OCBE has established successful CAGs in 3 different areas of the city. One is along the Washington Street corridor. So that's in this turquoise section of the map in Northwest, nearly west, but North Denver. So really drawing from Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhoods. And then we have one in the west area. It's called the West Area CAG in brown on the map. Initially, that CAG really focused on the West Colfax corridor, but now it's more broadly serving a number of neighborhoods in the West area, and they've reached recent community planning department recently completed their neighborhood planning project there, or the West area planning project. So there's going to be a lot new happening there as we move into 2023. So we're really working on partnering with CPD on bringing the right information to the community there. And then we have a third one in the purple area here in the Northeast downtown 5 Points neighborhood. That's really centered largely around the neighborhood transportation management program that was completed there several years ago, and the resulting 5 Points action plan that came out of that effort. So the CAGs in each of these areas have created important channels of communication between DOTI and other city department, program, and project managers, in addition to providing, that regular forum for consultation and collaboration with community about both city and neighborhood projects and activities. So as for our citywide project support, we also have Karen Grissom here tonight. She's our second community engagement specialist, and she focuses on providing effective engagement strategy and hands-on to support to many of DOTI's highest priority citywide efforts. A few of the program examples include Denver Moves Everyone. We have been working in partnership and so happy to do it with the Denver Moves Everyone team since they began. Another is volume-based pricing program, the Sidewalk Gap program, as well as the Community Transportation Network, really focusing on bikeways. And that's not to mention that Karen's leadership in our internal training program centered really on socializing our community engagement guide, which we did share with you all in the advanced materials that we sent out through Michelle. So as we look forward or towards 2023, we will definitely continue to support these efforts. And we do know, and it came up a little earlier in the meeting today, that the Sidewalk Ballot Initiative, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. There's way more information to come, but that's going to require, truly thoughtful and comprehensive engagement, strategizing, and support. And we will be here to do that for DOTI. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kayla Gilbert. She's our senior grants manager. She oversees, we have a number of grants programs and team members that are doing that good work. So she's going to share information on that work, as well as some of our measurements of success.
Thanks, Rebecca, and good evening, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about our grant programs. As you might have noticed in our previous organizational chart a couple slides ago, there are a number of our staff that are grant funded. This means that they work in a specific program and or geographic focus area within our Community Active Living Coalition, or CALC. We fund 3 full-time community connectors that are in geographic focus areas. So we have Chastity Gentry, who is our Southwest Community Connector in the dark blue on the bottom left of that map. She supports the neighborhoods of Marley, Harvey Park, College View, and Ruby Hill. We have Christian Stewart, who is our Northeast Community Connector in green in the top right, supporting neighborhoods of Montbello and East Colfax. Christian also supports a lot of regional efforts that include Green Valley Ranch, Central Park, Park Hill sometimes as well. And then our newest community connector, we just started this area this year, is Elizabeth Morales, and that's in the northwest area of Denver, in the orange on the top left. And she focuses in Chaffee Park and Sunnyside neighborhoods. Each of those people also have an additional part-time Safe Routes advocate that helps them. So you might know some other people in association with the CALC team. And then within our Safe Routes to School program, our focus is citywide, but prioritizes schools in the top 2 tiers of DOTI's Safe Routes to School action plan that was released in late 2021. So you see those mapped in those large dots as the locations of schools. The tier 1 and 2 are the larger red and purple dots. And so that our Safe Routes to School program focuses in a lot of those communities. Priscilla Bloom is our Safe Routes and Vision Zero educator. So she supports walk, bike, and roll programming through Safe Routes to School, while also leading another grant for citywide Vision Zero engagement efforts. And then, of course, we also have Teen Safe Streets program that focuses on teen driver safety, and a booster and seatbelt engagement program, or BASE, that focuses on promoting seatbelts and booster and car seats for younger children, and transportation safety for youth on that whole spectrum, from very, very small, all the way through being teenagers and learning how to drive themselves. Those programs are both led by Jamila Bryant on our team. And then I just wanted to also acknowledge on this map, you might see those like darker shadings of green. That is the DOTI Equity Index that's underneath the geographic focus areas. If you haven't seen this, we can get you a map of just that equity index. But this also helps prioritize our work, prioritizing communities and residents with the greatest needs. And then on the next couple slides, I have a couple snapshots of how we measure success in OCBE. So for our office as a whole, we have our engagement events tracker, which is filled out by every OCBE staff for each public meeting or event that we host or lead. Between October 2021 and September 2022, so one full year, just a little offset off the calendar year, we hosted 122 events that engaged over 11,000 people from our team. The word cloud on this slide shows the engagement goal that's listed for each of these events. So you can see a lot of hot topics that come up there, like biking, neighborhoods, community, schools, walking, leaders, lots of fun buzzwords like that. And then if you go to the next slide, the next two slides are a little bit more detail about programs and how we're measuring success. So for Safe Routes to School, this year we engaged 1,766 kids at 12 walk, bike, and roll to school events in 2022. Our Teacher Champion grant program that works with 3 specific schools in Denver right now is a pilot project. This past spring, at least 208 students received educational programming at those schools. We did observations at schools before and after school and measured a 6% increase in active transportation after receiving the programming. We also did pre and post tests with the students showed a 2.4 point increase in knowledge after receiving the educational programming as well. So this program is actually getting more kids walking and rolling and teaching them safe ways to do so. A couple quotes from our teacher champions. The students were engaged and enjoyed the videos. They were willing to try what they learned, and we had great success. Keep it up. And then lastly, a spotlight on the Calc micro grant from a different grant program, our Community Active Living Coalition. So this program gives grants up to $1,500 to community partners in Denver to do a project that relates to active transportation. The program this year has funded 53 micro grants to date. 71% of applicants had never applied before, which we are excited about because this program continues to engage new people who haven't been served by it before. And 33 evaluations have been completed to date of the projects that were completed, and 93% of those micro grantees agreed or strongly agreed to the questions or statements listed in the bullets here. The online application was easy to find and fill out. Communication was timely and thorough, was provided adequate resources and support, and I would consider applying for a future Calc micro grant. And then I also pulled a few great quotes from our micro grantees, but I really like this last one that speaks to the capacity building. That's one of our biggest goals of this program. This grant helped me build a positive attitude in my neighbors about cleaning up. People are less afraid to take walks now. So on that note, I will close out our presentation and allow time for questions and answers. Thanks.
And one quick thing that I did want to mention about Kayla that she didn't, one of the reasons we have as many grants as we do is because of her grant writing ability. She's a really wonderful grant writer, and the team supports Kayla in that effort for sure. But she is our lead grant seeker and writer, and so important to our being able to continue the work we're doing. So yeah, we'd love to have questions. I know we have limited time, and also would offer, please reach out directly. Just so happy to connect and talk one-on-one at any point. Jake?
Yeah, I had a question. I know briefly on one of the slides it had mentioned 311 and like customer service outreach.
Yeah,
I know that's something I've gotten a lot of constituent notices about, and you know, in reaction to in District 10 we had a ton of right-of-way enforcement complaints, and a lot of those seem to go not very far, or they were hard to follow, and some of them were closed out without the issue being addressed. Is this an effort to kind of address that problem and be more responsive in that light?
Yes, and this is currently one of our vacant positions, so it's a the title is customer service strategist, and we did have someone in that position until about mid-year this year. And really what the role is to provide sort of an overall, there's many different people who are working, customer service reps, area engineers. There's a lot of different folks who support the 311 effort, but this position helps to coordinate between the different sort of players who are involved in that, and really serve as a communicator with community about particularly difficult cases that might be longer to resolve, to be able to be there, to be that communicator, and work very closely with the area engineers on that. And I do know, since the position has been vacant and we are absolutely recruiting to fill that position, I have 6 hopefully decent candidates right now that we're looking to interview before the end of the year. I really do think when that position is filled, it will help greatly. It's not going to solve the problem, but it will absolutely help to mitigate some of those complaints from community. And I don't know if you've seen that. I'd be interested to know if that's something you've seen more of recently, or if it's been steady, over whatever period of time you've been tracking that. But that could, that's possible that, without that sort of liaison there, that it's making it a little bit bumpier.
Okay. Appreciate the context. Thank you.
Sure. If that's it, I would definitely want to, if there are any other questions, we certainly invite them. But again, if there's not, we appreciate your time and absolutely invite you to connect with any one of us one-on-one. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, Tim, Chris, Kayla, and the whole team here for introducing us tonight. Looking forward to what you'll be able to accomplish. Not that you haven't already, but yeah.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Jonathan, if I might quickly, I'd really like to recognize Michelle Faust. She and I were part of the team that first put OCBE together just a few years ago. And she was just incredibly instrumental in designing OCBE and putting it together. I'm now the outgoing executive director. I started working with the city in 1972, and I'll be retiring just after the first of the year and leaving it in Rebecca and team's good hands. But Michelle will still be here, and thumbs up to her.
Well, that's certainly no
squeeze
surprise. Michelle's been excellent to us in her time here. Has really held the team together here. So no surprise that she's been a core asset to your team there as well.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you, team. We have just 5 minutes left in tonight's meetings, and I am aware of 2 topics that I know we wanted to cover briefly to close out the evening. Jake, others, please let me know if more have come to mind here. But one is something we mentioned early on in the meeting during the public comment period. Jake and I were discussing sort of sidebarring over here, and it's clear the community's repeatedly coming back and returning to the board to ask for more updates and details about the analysis, response, department actions around the I-25 Broadway project. Chris, Ian, and I looked into this briefly when the project subcommittee existed at one point in time, but as you may recall, in the last month or maybe it was 2 ago, we revised our committee structure to only have 2 standing committees and instead lean more heavily on ad hoc committees of folks who raise their hand to want to take on and assess certain projects or certain asks to the group. Given the attention this topic has, and continues to have we think it might be appropriate to open up an ad hoc committee here for further communications, follow-up and investigation around current actions related to I-25 and Broadway. Wondering if there's anyone in the group here who would like to be a part of that ad hoc committee.
I would, if no one wants to be the first one, I'll go.
I do know Chris Johnson is a subject matter expert here as well and had to drop off partway through the call, so he may be interested as well. We can follow up separately. Aileen, I see still having some audio issues, but has noted in the chat that she would like to be involved as well. Anyone else for this committee? Okay, so we'll look to Jake and Eileen. I'll email or communicate maybe via Slack with you separately about a bit of what we've learned so far, a bit of summary of the recent public comments just to kick things off. And we'll also reach out to Chris to see if he'd like to be involved as well, given his expertise here. Separately here, 5:57 p.m. I know we just got a couple minutes left. Before we close tonight, wanted to give a quick preview of the approaching agendas for the board here. So looking ahead to December, we primarily are focusing on one topic. Rolf Eisinger of the Vision Zero program is returning. He actually presented to us, I think it was last December. I need to double check dates. It might have been December, might have been January, about the Vision Zero program. He had a presentation focused primarily on traffic signaling and signage updates to help prevent fatalities and SBIs for passengers and drivers on in various parts of the city. I know following that presentation, the members of this advisory board, some of which, some of you weren't members quite yet, but the members of this advisory board requested additional detail and investigation about more so a focus on what actions are being taken to resolve injuries on our high injury network. What holistic interventions are we performing on Colfax, Federal, and Colorado? Those roads were called out. What are we doing? What's our strategy to reducing injuries on these corridors from a strategic standpoint? Are we looking at road diets? What are we looking to other cities for guidance on, et cetera? So Rolf will be coming back to speak to us next month on the topic of Vision Zero. We're hoping to have a prep meeting with him in advance just to review and revise some of these concepts to make sure it's what this group is looking for and what we requested previously. Looking ahead to January, Ted Porras and David DiGiacomo will be presenting on Denver's red light and speed camera systems. I want to discuss the current program, any changes being considered at the local level, state legislative status of these functions, and how we in Denver avoid equity issues that have been identified in similar programs in other cities. Looking ahead one more month, February, we don't have a specified topic yet. There are a couple that we've been investigating, but haven't finalized one for February just yet. Do want to call out here, Jamie mentioned that Policy and Ops Committee, the next meeting is November 16th at 10 a.m. So I think everyone here has an invite to that by default. I actually mean like a Zoom or Teams like invitation. If you are interested in joining but don't have that, do reach out to Jamie and I'm sure he can provide. And we've just hit 6, but Lucia, I see your hands raised, so want to give you a chance to speak here as well.
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. It was just very briefly mentioned earlier, and I feel like it's a bigger topic and that we need to maybe address at a future meeting. And that is the sidewalks initiative that just passed. Hooray, hooray, hooray. So, and how obviously DOTI is have to be doing some thinking and how they're going to make this happen and the city, et cetera, et cetera. But, I would like to acknowledge the work that was done by many, many people with the Denver Streets Partnership leading the way and seeing this get passed. So could that be?
Thank you, Lucia, for taking time to call that out. I know you're right. We sort of mentioned it in sort of passing, even though this is like a major capital project. If it does pass, technically the votes aren't counted yet, as Nick introduced, but this is going to be transformational for the city if it does, if it does finalize. And for those following along, there were a couple of mentions of this in the meeting today, noting from Nick that, you know, they have a lot to investigate, a lot to work on, a lot to research here around implementation plans, policy, whether city council will look to tweak it, et cetera. He mentioned they should have an update before end of year. Rebecca's presentation mentioned it as well. Just in full disclosure, was thinking that we might request an update, like a discussion and presentation around what has been decided or what's to come, et cetera, for that February meeting. It might be that would give us enough time for the department and city council and others to really hash some more things out. Yeah. Yeah, all right, so we're a little over time. Thanks for sticking with us here. I know this was a really packed agenda. We didn't have time for policy committee updates, things along those lines. We'll be sure to reserve time for that in our December meeting. Thanks for joining, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving ahead.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.